Good night.
Thank you. How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles. I'm speaking for the Mercury Theater, and what follows is supposed to advertise our first motion picture. Citizen Kane is the title, and we hope it can correctly be called a coming attraction. It's certainly coming to this theater, and I think our Mercury actors make it an attraction. I'd like you to meet them. Speaking of attractions, well, the chorus girls are certainly an attraction, but frankly, ladies and gentlemen, we're just showing you the chorus girls for purposes of ballyhoo. It's pretty nice ballyhoo. But here's some of our real Mercury people. This is the first time you've seen most of them on the screen. Hey, give Joe a little light. Thanks. Now smile for the folks, Joe. Smile. Joseph Cotton, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Joseph Cotton. I think you're going to see a lot of him. Here's Ruth Warwick, whom I know you love. Ruth. Look at the camera, Ruth. We caught Ruth with her hair up. And here's somebody you've all heard on the radio, so I don't have to tell you he's wonderful, Ray Collins. Dorothy Commongore is a name I'm going to repeat. Dorothy Commongore. I won't have to repeat it much longer. You'll be repeating it. And here's George Coulouris, who's a grand actor. I'll say that name again. George Coulouris. Watch it. Here comes Everett Sloane. Look out, Everett. Oops. Everett Sloane, ladies and gentlemen, he isn't necessarily a comedian. And here's one of the best actors in the world, Agnes Moorehead. I've said a lot of nice things, but Erskine Sanford deserves some more. Erskine Sanford. So does Paul. Paul Stewart, everybody. Citizen Kane is a modern American story about a man called Kane, Charles Foster Kane. I don't know how to tell you about him. There's so many things to say. I'll turn you over instead to the characters in the picture. As you'll see, they feel very strongly on the subject.
Charles Foster Kane is...
Sure, he started the war. But do you think if it hadn't been for Mr. Kane, the United States would have the Panama Canal?
Charles Foster Kane is nothing more or less than a communist.
Kane, governor. Listen, when the voters of this state and Mrs. Kane learn what I found out about Mr. Kane and a certain little blondie named Susan Alexander, he couldn't be elected dog catcher. I'm going to skin Mr. Charles Foster Kane alive.
I'm going to marry him next week at the White House.
Emily, I hear you've been stepping out with Charlie Kane.
Of course I love him. I gave him $60 million.
Well, of course I love him. He's the richest man in America.
That's what all the girls say about him at first.
But you know, I can't help but admire him. He's crazy.
He's wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you'll think about Mr. Kane. I can't imagine. You see, I play the part myself. Well, Kane is a hero and a scoundrel, a no-account and a swell guy, a great lover, a great American citizen, and a dirty dog. It depends on who's talking about him. What's the real truth about Charles Foster Kane? I wish you'd come to this theater when Citizen Kane plays here and decide for yourself.
Okay, folks, the Cine-Geezers are back. I'm sorry it's taken a while, but for a couple of old farts, we're awfully busy these days. So I'm Cine-Geezer Mike Dobbs, and the other bearded gentleman is...
I'm Stephen R. Bissett, Cine-Geezer number 2, and we're here with a special guest.
Yes, a special guest, a gentleman who, in all sincerity, is a truly significant person in film, academia, and history, and that's Ray Kelly. And Ray is the guy who founded WellsNet, which is the online omnibus source for everything Orson Welles. And Ray has been into Orson Welles for about as long as I've known him, and that's a long time. Ray was the news guy at WREB Radio, where I was a talk show host, and then he went on to a very long and very successful career at the Republican newspaper in Springfield. And during this time, I mean, he's a Wells guy. And it's just not being a fan, it's being a true scholar and it's being a resource for people who are looking to learn more about arguably the world's greatest filmmaker in many ways. I mean, I know that some people think Jess Franco is the world's greatest filmmaker.
No, 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 no. I did have an argument with Gary Groth, editor and co-founder of the Comics Journal, once about, was it Orson Welles or Alfred Hitchcock? And I think that conversation was still ongoing a few years ago when Gary and I caught up again.
So,
Well,
Ray, welcome aboard Cine-Geezers.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. We mentioned Jess Franco. The Wells connection on that a lot of people aren't aware of was that Jess Franco was an assistant on Chimes at Midnight, Falstaff. And at that point, Wells had a plan. It was a very daring plan. He was going to shoot two movies back to back. He was going to do Chimes at Midnight, which would be the art house film he wanted to do. And he was going to do Treasure Island. And there are some snippets of that footage that exist. Jess Franco was going to shoot Treasure Island. And I think in many ways, it was kind of like what Wells did when he did Magnificent Ambersons, which was never going to be a crowd pleaser. And he had Journey into Fear, directed by his pal Norman Foster, going out at the same time. And I've seen the scripts for that version of Treasure Island, which is nothing like the 72 version that was done. And there's footage of the Hispaniola, and it would have been an interesting film. I think it would have been a great thing. And that would have been Jess Franco's project with Wells producing.
Wow. Wow.
Let's dispel one myth about Wells, and I know this is a myth, but I just want you to dispel it, is that unfortunately, people have repeated the idea that Wells never wanted to complete something. And in the books that I've read and the interviews I've seen, I've never gotten the sense that Wells was afraid of completing a project.
I don't think so. I think he went through extraordinary efforts to complete films. Just going back, people like to talk the later years, but let's take a look at a film like Othello, which he financed out of his own pocket over a period of several years and different continents, and put a lot of effort into completing that film. And it's a great movie. That was something he personally financed and spent years on. That's not a guy with a fear of completion.
Right.
The Other Side of the Wind, obviously, is the one we always talk about because so much effort went into that, but there was a lot of political reasons, and it just was it was a very tumultuous time. And also, I think when the movie started, it reflected something, the new Hollywood era. By the time all the funding was in place, I don't think Hollywood 1977, 78, was the same as the Hollywood when he started doing it in 72.
Yeah, Jaws and Star Wars had
Oh,
changed
yeah.
everything, So, not to mention Michael Cimino and Heaven's Gate. So, yeah, it was a very, very, very different work environment, very different industry.
Yeah, a whole new Hollywood thing. And as we say, with Jaws and Other Side of the Wind began production in August of 1970, and it wrapped principal photography in early 76. So by that point, it's the Hollywood it's lampooning no longer, is on the table. It's gone.
Yeah, yeah, true enough. I wonder where that rumor started.
I think Charles Hyam in his book, the first Wells book he did, The Films of Orson Welles, really, pushed that whole motif, that whole thought, even going back to It's All True, as if what happened in South America back in 42 was Wells's fault. There's a whole Wells had a great career until he went to Hollywood, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
He had all these hits on Broadway, on radio. He was much in demand. Kane rankled the wrong people, but Ambersons and the It's All True episode of 42 was a debacle, and he never really recovered from that.
Let's talk about a moment about his second studio film, The Magnificent Ambersons, because you have a piece up on WellsNet about this announcement that this company is going to attempt to create with AI the proper ending for Ambersons.
It's
And all of us love the myth of the Lost movie.
Right.
It's our catnip. You know,
Mm,
uh,
sure.
Steve gave me years ago a book that when it came out when I was in college, I couldn't afford it. And it's the reconstructed Greed, Eric von Stroheim's
Yes.
legendary film. And the way it's reconstructed is that they had the script. It was a guy named Weinberg had the script and had a huge pile of the stills. And he was able to match the script with the stills and fill in the spot. So you really do get a sense of what that was. But granted, I love von Stroheim stuff, and it would be wonderful if suddenly in some foreign archive or something, or some attic, there was all the clips, there was all of the stuff that Metro cut out. But Ambersons has been another one of those cause celebs about a messed up
Yeah.
movie. And what do you think about the nature of this? I have very mixed feelings about AI to begin with, but what do you think about the idea of quote completing it?
Well, that's a good point. Let me just backtrack. In 1993, a wonderful fellow, Roger Ryan, took all the surviving still frames that he could get his hands on, and he on VHS edited together the Ambersons, putting in these still frames, and he had uh, amateur actors recite the lines of Cotton and Moorhead and Holt. And it was shown at it's never been really publicly shown often. It was shown at the Locarno Film Festival back in 2005. It's wonderful. And when I want to watch Ambersons, I put it on. I like Roger's version. And it gives you the sense of it. About 2 years ago, I was dealing with a young man, Brian Rose. Brian completed Ambersons using animation. Now he did he did storyboard sketches. And it was very charcoal images, and it gave you what he put a lot of effort in was the movement. Roger's version doesn't have that because it's still frames, so you miss the pause, the beat, how long lines should play out, or someone walking across the floor, and Brian captures that movement. I don't think the animation, the charcoal sketch animation, is for everybody. Uh, I gave a lecture a few years ago at the Free Library in Philadelphia, and Brian was kind enough to allow me to show his ending to Ambersons. People loved it. I think it's for scholars, it's a great way to do this, to get that feel of what was there. You can't commercially redo this film. It's just not going to happen though. It's a commercial product. There's far too much footage missing. We could put that many still frames or that much animation. So enter Edward and his folks at the AI team. They contacted Brian because Brian, had the knowledge of what was missing, the movement, and they talked to him about doing something with AI. And they announced it at the Venice Film Festival. I've there's going to be 3 stages to how they're doing it. They're first going to redo all the missing scenes, Mike and Steve, all of them, with amateur actors. And it's more to get the feel of how everything works.
Right.
And they're going to sit down, critique that, go through it and fine tune it. And what did they get wrong in movement or face shading, or what didn't work technically. Then there'll be a third pass, and that will be they're going to bring in stage actors to be Cotton, be Moorhead, be Holt, and then they will work off of them. That's where the AI will merge the faces and put the body types, because they feel they need stage actors, real actors. You can't just have me walking down the hall as Joseph Cotton. You need a pro to do these things, and they'll match that. For just to explain what they were doing, they created a quick reel of the boarding house sequence, and I saw it, and it was thrown together quick. And Mike, Steve, I cannot tell you how unnerving it was to see Joseph Cotton sitting in the chair talking to Agnes Moorehead. It was Cotton's voice, it was Cotton's face, stood up, walked across the room, took the needle off the Victrola that's playing a radio, a show, a comedy record in the background, and then walked back, his shadow cast over the actress in place of Agnes Moorehead. And it was unnerving. I couldn't believe how this was just a rough sketch of what they want to do. Nothing that you would consider to be something worthy of showing. And they kept telling me how this was just something they put together. And it was really unnervingly like watching Cotton.
Wow.
But there's stuff that you can't guess. And they admit to this. I mean, they're very honest about one of the things. They're not doing this to make this a commercial project. There's not even a real plan in place to put this out publicly.
Well, they want to see it though, right?
What they want to do is they want to create. Edward Sachi's belief is he wants to create something where he can say, this is what AI can, in the right hands, do. And this is what we can do with AI if you use it responsibly. And he's looking at Ambersons as something to show off the technology. Okay. I think the people who are in the best spot are Warner Brothers right now, because Warner Brothers isn't paying a dime for this. It's being done by someone else. If it comes out wonderful, Warner can turn around and say, hey, this would make a nice extra on a Criterion 4K disc, right? So Warner Brothers, if it's great, can use it. And right now, when everyone's screaming about replacing actors and the evils of AI, Warner Brothers isn't taking any grief. They're just sitting there quiet. So, they're in a win position. If it's good and they want it, they can use it. If they don't want it and it comes out awful, that's the way it is. But there's a real problem with doing this. And I'm assuming you're both familiar. The ending to The Magnificent Ambersons that the studio cut has a happy ending of Cotton and Moorehead in a hospital corridor, smiling blissfully, telling us everything's going to be great. In the Wells version, she's living in a rundown boarding house. She's carried a torch for Cotton's character. He shows up at the door to talk about his long lost love still, not to have anything to do, not specifically for her. So here's my question for you. You can create Joseph Cotton's face. You can create Agnes Moorehead's face. You can duplicate their voice. I don't know, and I've read a lot about this film all my life. What is Agnes Moorehead's reaction when Joseph Cotton comes through the door? Is there a second that she thinks he's there for her? Is it she's already dead to him and she knows that this is not going anywhere? Is there joy then replaced with this sullen note? Or is it, we don't know. We don't have that from the cutting continuity. We don't know what Wells intended. Joseph Cotton's dead. Agnes Moorehead's dead. The camera people are gone. There's no one to tell us exactly what Wells wanted. And that's the key parts that's going to be an issue. We know that Joseph Cotton gets out of that chair and walks across the room, and we know that his shadow casts across her, and he sits back down. But what is the mood? What's the expression? That's the stuff you can't catch. And Mike, one thing you'll be happy to hear and see that they're planning on when they're done, they will duplicate the grain from the 1942 stock.
Wow.
Well, you have to, because when I watched Joseph Cotton walk out of that chair, I kept thinking, boy, this is so too digital, clean and sharp.
Right.
It doesn't have, it's just way too much. So, the question too is, what would Wells have thought of this?
What is your answer? Because if of the three of us, you would have.
I don't know. First of all, I don't think he wanted anyone touching his stuff. Well, and I really think he would have had a problem with that, with it being done by someone else. I think this film was important to him. I don't think the innovations would have bothered him. It would have not being involved in it.
Well, because as just as a magician / charlatan, as he called himself, in F is for Fake, he would want to be the one pulling the levers, making it go.
I was peripherally involved with the folks who were doing the completion of The Other Side of the Wind, And one of the things I felt very comfortable about that project was that Wells had said to Peter Bogdanovich, if something happens to me, I want you to handle it.
Right.
And Peter was involved in it. I went out to Tribeca West. I sat in on an editing session. And believe me, Peter was the voice. He was making the decisions. Scenes were presented to him and the producers, and Peter was the thumbs up, thumbs down guy. And also, the rest of the people involved in it had connections either on the original production or had a friendship with people involved in it. Uh, Ambersons, there's nobody left.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's just, now all that said, do I want to see this done? Yeah, absolutely. Am I curious? Yeah. Is it going to be good? I don't know. But I was coming home on the Mass Pike on Sunday night, and everybody, the traffic was at a crawl because of a really minor fender bender, and everyone was rubbernecking. So at the worst, I'm going to slow down and look at this when it's done. That's so, but it's hard to say. I mean, I know the people involved want this to be a quality production. I believe them and I take them at their word. I don't necessarily believe that their motive is because they love Orson Welles. They want to show that they have a technology that's, can be used for other things.
And we knew this day was coming. I mean, Mike, you and I talked to each other after Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow was playing in theaters, and we both knew this day was coming, that after seeing Laurence Olivier placed into a role he never performed,
right,
in a film that was, concocted as a digital creation, we knew this day was coming. It doesn't soften the blow. It doesn't sweeten the pot. Choose your metaphor. But.
Well, it's funny, we all love Peter Cushing, and we've seen Star Wars Rogue One.
Yeah, it was creepy,
right? And Carrie Fisher's in that, and it was very funny because when I was talking to the AI people for this, we don't want it to look like Peter Cushing and Carrie Fisher and Rogue One. And I was thinking to myself, well, I thought they had done a pretty decent job on that.
Yeah,
actually.
Actually, I thought the Peter Cushing character looked remarkably like him. I don't think they succeeded with Carrie Fisher.
No,
I'm also thinking of there was a film called Mute Witness. Alec Guinness died during the filming. It was a suspense film involving Russian mobsters, and it was a thriller. But they fabricated a performance out of what they had. And I'm also thinking of Oliver Reed in Gladiator, the Ridley Scott film, where he died before they had completed his sequences, and they used
stand-ins and others. Yeah, right.
Exactly. Crude forms of the CGI that you're describing, Ray, which has been refined to another whole level right now.
Well,
so.
I always get, everyone comes up to me and talks to me, about Orson Welles and classic film. And, we're talking about finishing something when someone's passed away. And I'm like, I'm really a fan of those Dead Shemp stage shorts.
Yeah.
And I always feel like I have to be careful I say this to, because then, there's some people I run into with the Wells crowd who are, a little bit highbrow. And I'm like, there's other things out there, to watch. But
yeah, I mean, Shemp died, and
oh God,
they shot most of his stuff for the last short from the back. They had someone
which Sam Raimi has never let us forget. On
That's
the credit
right.
Of every film, fake Shemps. I also think back to, I mean, it was very different technology we're talking about, but I loved seeing the restoration of Touch of Evil on the big screen at the Amherst Cinema, Mike. I think, did you and I go together that night to see it?
We may have.
And I know it was Walter Murch and as an editor and another whole crew. They were also working from very specific notes, that document that 58-page document.
Yeah, 58-page memo.
So, there's the guiding hand of Wells being applied. But, when I revisited Touch of Evil last night and this morning to prepare for our conversation, that's the version I watched. I love that version.
Yeah, I picked up used the Wells version, the Wells reconstructed version with, there we go, and with the Universal version. And it's a great film. It's like the most impressive drive-in exploitation movie ever made, because the elements of it are really sort of sordid. They are late 50s. I mean, you got
Mercedes McCambridge, I Want to Watch. Oh, that's just so creepy.
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
But
I was shocked when I watched the 1957 trailer because it includes the line from the younger Grande saying, "Hold her legs." And that's in a trailer for a film in 1958 from Universal International. Oh my God.
This was her wedding night. Where was the man she had married? Who were these hoodlums?
Hold her legs.
Starring this outstanding cast: Charlton Heston, Janet Leigh,
I could love being corny if my husband would only cooperate.
Orson Welles, co-starring Joseph Kalea, Akim Tamirov, with guest stars Marlene Dietrich, Zsa Zsa Gabor.
What are you trying to do?
We're trying to strap you in the electric chair, boy.
Only the offbeat, original, creative powers of Orson Welles could bring you so suspenseful, so gripping, so different a drama of love threatened by vengeance.
Mike may be spoiling some of your fun.
Mike?
My husband, yeah. And if you're trying to scare me into calling him off, let me tell you something, Mr. Grandy. I may be scared, but he won't be.
Of a struggle between titans.
You framed that boy.
Framed him! Of a manhunt like nothing you've ever experienced.
You're a cop now. I'm a husband. What did you do with her? Where is my wife? My wife!
I just think that it's a truly remarkable film, and it also lays to rest the concept of Wells making something commercial. His touch of evil was as commercial as you could get. There was, yeah. Is it done in his manner? Yes. Refined, interesting, innovative. Yeah, it's a Wells film, but it's also, all right, you want a drive-in movie? I'm going to give you a drive-in movie.
It's incredibly Baroque as well. I mean, Dennis Weaver's performance is astonishing in that film. But Akim Tamiroff, one of the great screen grotesques as Grande, you know.
Yeah.
Steve, Steve, you were mentioning the reconstructed version, the reconstructed Evil from 98. If you look at that and then you watch the other, one of the things that really occurred to me is Janet Leigh's character, which I always just there was kind of in the way and she wasn't important. With the re-editing, it really, when they cut between what's happening to Charlton Heston's character and hers, her role in the film just goes way up just by simple editing.
Exactly. And Walter Murch in the bonus features points out that cutting one shot of Orson Welles' assistant, played by Joseph Caliente, am I pronouncing? That he points out that by removing a single shot, it changed the character where he was driven by his own impulse instead of being browbeaten by Charlton Heston when they're in that, the public records room. And to hear that from as skilled an editor as Murch, pointing out that if I took out this one shot because Wells had indicated his problem with it, realizing he'd made an error. And it was a shot that Wells himself had constructed. It wasn't something that had been reshot by Universal during their whole re-edit process.
Wells always made it clear that, for him, the magic was in the editing room. A lot of people think the director, behind the camera, but Wells did a lot in the editing room. And that's where you set the feel.
He also, I mean, I revisited F is for Fake just for that reason, Ray, because he spent, I read somewhere, almost a year editing that film. And it's a remarkable, I love the movie. It's such a prankster delight.
Yeah.
But I love the film, but it is brilliantly edited and put together, including incorporating Ray Harryhausen animation from Earth versus the Flying Saucers. I also revisited The Stranger.
Yeah.
And I've got two versions on disc. I've got the one that Olive Film put out, but the one I rewatched was the Library of Congress Kino restoration, which is unbelievably sharp. I mean, it is a glorious print.
Okay, so I'm one of those sick people that has multiple copies, so I have both of those.
Same here.
You're in good company.
And I just heard that there's going to be a new version of Stranger coming out that the same folks who did the trial are going to be taking that Library of Congress print and working on that, because there's a few scratches and stuff on that print that can be cleaned up.
Yeah, but my God, it's so rich. I mean, watching it on my projected screen, you can see the makeup on, it's phenomenal. But I also revisiting the film. This is the one Orson Welles I grew up watching, because it used to be on television all the time.
All the time.
It was part of the RKO package, and then it became sort of public domain, was the perception. I finally clocked the sequence, because everyone rightfully praises the opening of Touch of Evil, which is 4 minutes 15 seconds. There is a 4-minute single shot in The Stranger as the same cinematographer, Russell Meddy, working with Wells, follows the walk from the building behind the school into the woods as he's talking to the little man who was released from jail to find him. Exactly. And man, that is a bravura, understated, sweet spot in the film. And it is an unbroken shot of 4 minutes.
And when Wells ends up becoming an independent filmmaker outside of the Hollywood system, he doesn't have the technicians and the ability to do those things that you see in The Stranger or Touch of Evil. So it's a different kind of creativity that you see in Othello, or you see, Chimes at Midnight. One of the most interesting experiences I had, I've seen that film a few times, but I saw it the restored print at the Film Forum in New York. And my son and I was with Beatrice Wells, who's in the film, and we sat in the back row, and I got a commentary throughout the entire film. She just kept whispering in my ear, because she remembered from childhood, from growing up, all these stories. And the big battle scene in Chimes at Midnight, there's those legs that are like buried under someone else's, and they're in the mud twitching as they're dying and stuff. She whispers to me, "That's Keith Baxter's legs. And that's the mud room at the hotel laundry."
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
And then there's when Falstaff has the conscripts. There's these sad-faced, guys, they're being drafted to go off to one of the long faces. Those were the waiters at the restaurant that we used to go to. And he thought they had great faces for film. So there's a lot, there's a lot of Wells trickery, a lot of stuff that's fun. I mean, I get a kick out of when I watch Touch of Evil that, we know now that Janet Leigh had broken her arm.
Right.
Her arm was in a cast, and she's always got a sweater over it or whatever. And they removed the cast when she's in the nightgown in the attack scene in the bedroom. But everything else, that woman had a cast on. You never notice it. Or in The Stranger, when Loretta Young is being pulled up the ladder to the top of the clock tower.
Yeah.
That wasn't a stunt person, and that was an actual drop. And that's Loretta Young being held on by someone's arm.
Oh, my God.
Who would have allowed that? I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I bet the studio had no idea.
Oh, I'm sure they had no idea.
They would have found out.
Now, I don't know how either of you have seen, The Other Side of the Wind.
Yes.
The footage that's shot on the MGM lot, they didn't get permission for that. And so Wells hid in the trunk of the car, and they drove through the lot, and all of his, his crews, all these young college age guys, and they,
Yeah.
oh man, we're here just to shoot some student film footage. Yeah, okay, sure, you can use the empty lot. And it's Wells, pops, and they're shooting on the MGM lot, which they didn't have permission for. Um, there's a lot of stuff like that. That's always fun to look for in films.
Now I've got the laser disc of Other Side of the Wind. How different is that edition from the one that's now available?
Not Other Side of the Wind. Other Side of the Wind's not out on home video in any format. It's only a Netflix thing at this point.
Right, that's what I meant. The streaming, is that completely different from the version that was?
Well, when Wells died, he had never seen all the footage that he had shot. He hadn't even had it all printed. The footage was partly funded by himself and partly funded by the Shah of Iran's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And they had some disputes over the financing, and the film ended up, the negative ended up in Paris at the time of Wells's death, and it was unedited, and the sound elements were there too. And so they sat from 1985 until 2017 in Paris in a film vault until the proper deals were cut, and then it was edited. Wells had a work print, which I've seen. It's 42 minutes long, and it's only a few scenes cut, because some of the scenes are multiple takes of it. So it's not like, but it gives you a flavor of what he wanted for the editing. But Bob Murawski, who was the Oscar-winning editor of The Hurt Locker, and a friend of cinematographer Gary Graver, he was a friend of Gary's. What Bob did was he really immersed himself in looking at the footage that Orson had cut, and those 42 minutes, and got the feel and the rhythm down from that. But so sadly, that's a movie that I'm a big fan of physical media. That's not, and I really, truly, I appreciate what Netflix did, because I'm going to tell you, there was nobody else at the table, offering to put up that money. There was nobody out there, and it was only Netflix. If it wasn't for Netflix, that footage, I'm convinced, would be, rotting away still in Paris. So Netflix put up the money. It was, I want to say, close to no questions asked. They didn't want a seat at the table on the editing. They just wanted to produce Orson Welles' last movie. But Netflix is a streaming company, and they have allowed some Blu-rays and some discs. I'm under the impression, though I don't know this firsthand, that Criterion has not shown an interest in putting out this title on disc at this point. I don't understand why, but that's what I hear. And I've heard from people I trust that the holdup is Criterion's lack of interest. But I'll tell you, when that movie came out, I had friends at Telluride who said the marketing people at Netflix, I'm not talking to people that greenlit the movie, I'm not talking Ted Sarandos, I'm not talking Ian Breeze. The marketing people, I never had the feeling they liked the movie. I think that they were made uncomfortable about it. The John Huston character was a misogynist. He was homophobic. He was racist. He wasn't pleasant. And by any stretch, I think it somehow unnerved them and bothered them, the marketing people. There was a plan at one point where Frank Marshall was a pretty big name in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
And Peter Bogdanovich were going to go and take the film around the country and do select screenings. And they would do a Q&A and show the film across the country at different places. And Frank wanted to do it, and so did Peter. And I was approached at one point where someone said to me, who else do you think would be out there if we wanted to do it in regional markets? And I said to him, well, I've got the list of surviving cast members and crew, and I know some of them would love to do this. Oh, that sounds great. That sounds great. In the end, they showed it in a few theaters, and they didn't do any kind of wide push for it. I know that Bob Murawski, who I said edited the film, he also is involved. He founded a company with Sage Stallone, Grindhouse Releasing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bob is the guy behind Grindhouse, and he had a great idea. He wanted to take 35 millimeter prints of it and send it off to 52 theaters, like one every week. It would be somewhere else.
Right,
and move it
right.
around the country. And he had
Roadshow it.
have enough connections to show it off 35 millimeter, which is how Bob wanted to do it. And again, that never happened. So it just was never a real excitement about it. Even at Telluride, a friend of mine said someone in marketing, not knowing this person was a crew member on the original shoot, said, well, it's a fine movie, but you got to watch that Morgan Neville documentary. And they were really hyping Morgan Neville's fine documentary. They were pushing that as opposed to the feature film. It's just the way it was.
That's too bad because, this was a really remarkable opportunity
Oh, God.
to have this film finished and have it finished by people who knew what Wells's intent was. And then it doesn't get the boost that you think it should get.
Well, these media corporations don't have institutional memory. I mean,
No.
when I was working, I'm going way back. I mean, when I was working for Marvel in the early 80s, there were people up there who didn't know who Steve Ditko was, and yet Spider-Man was their primary, top-selling character. And it's only gotten worse since, so.
Well, it's just that AFI tribute for Wells, which I think everything I've read and heard was that Wells was hoping that this could start things up, that this was the spark plug that he needed. And he's got this room full of Hollywood executives and director, producer types like Spielberg, and that somebody would have stepped up. And, afterwards said, Orson, let's go out for a drink and let's talk about your film. And it didn't happen, which makes me realize that I think there's very few people within the Hollywood industry that actually appreciates history, actually has a sense of those who have come before, and understands that there's many, many people who want to see these films and they want to learn about them because they understand that, the stuff that Wells did was singular while he was alive. But when you see them now, it's something you can learn from, much less enjoy them as movies. And that whole scene where he's at the AFI tribute and then he shows a clip from the film, my heart's breaking when I watch it. I mean, you talk about a guy who's putting himself out there completely, totally, and not getting that response back. I mean,
well, what Steve
just too
said,
much.
What Steve said about institutional memory and how it's lacking. Shortly after Wind was completed, Larry Jackson, who was a production manager on the film, he's the one of the documentary filmmakers. He worked with Wells on some other projects as well, and went on to become a VP at Samuel Goldwyn, and worked and had a pretty decent Hollywood career. He directed a film I know you both love, the Bugs Bunny Superstar.
Oh, okay.
So Larry's a great guy, and I said to Larry, I got an idea. I'm going to go to this theater and I'm going to talk to him about showing the other side of the wind. And I'll go up as Mr. Wellsnet here and I'll introduce you. And then you can just tell all these great stories about working with Orson. All right. And I pitched it to this theater and they had zero interest. Okay. Right. And this was, I was stunned. And I went back, I told to Larry, and he said, Ray, you got to understand, when these people hear the words, the old masters, they think you're talking about Quentin Tarantino.
Oh yeah. That's where their memory goes back to.
They're not thinking about Ford and Wells and Hawks. That's not who these people are, and it's true.
I don't even think we have to go back that far. I mean, no. I've done a lot of. I did a lot of research about a very obscure 1965 film, Dark Intruder, and part of my fascination, Ray, was that it had the imprimatur of Shamley Productions on it, which was Alfred Hitchcock's production company, right? Okay. And it was filmed as a pilot, and I was just trying to sort out. Hitchcock must have seen this because I read repeatedly that once Lew Wasserman pulled him into the fold at MCA Universal, Hitchcock made it his job to watch every Universal product because he was now a shareholder. He had a large share in the company. In reading this, I also found out the heartbreaker that after Lew Wasserman signed Hitchcock to that contract, Hitchcock never got to make another one of his pet projects. We're talking about from Marnie to the end of his life, Family Plot. He was always talked out of doing the films he wanted to do and shoehorned into what Lew Wasserman wanted him doing, which was Lew Wasserman wanted North by Northwest, right? He wanted that MGM mashup of suspense and glamour and humor. And if they were doing that to Hitchcock, who they were paying through the nose, I mean, he became a very wealthy man because of that deal, but creatively, the faucet was turned off. The Birds is essentially his last film, Marnie being a compromise project in other ways. And if they're doing that to Hitchcock in 1967, then Orson Welles was already a decade out of Hollywood and forgotten, you know.
It's a remarkable shame. And having taught film history locally at Western New England University, and Steve, I think, will agree with me, it's a big push just to get open-minded college kids to look at anything that they deem as old. Black and white is a tough sell sometimes.
Yes.
And silent films. I mean, I had a kid say to me, "When are we going to watch Gone with the Wind, Mr. Dobbs?" And I said, "Not in this class." Well, why? Yeah. Besides the fact that Gone with the Wind is unwatchable today. I mean, it is unwatchable. It is so freaking racist. I can't, and I had to watch it again for my Tom Tyler book because he's in a scene.
Right.
But I said, you can get that anywhere. This was when we had video stores. I'm showing you stuff that you don't know about and plays a role in the development of film.
Well, I'll switch to a positive note. One night I used to do a film night every week with my cartooning school students. Ray, Mike knows about this, and until the last 2 years of that process, I had healthy turnouts for movie night, and one of my favorite movie nights personally was I showed them back to back Shadow of a Doubt and The Stranger, right?
Oh, good choice.
Yeah. Those are really strong companion films. Now, I'm talking to my students day in, day out, week after week as fellow storytellers. And that's what I was engaging them with. And they would turn out for these movies, you know. Another double bill I did, which I've talked to you about, Mike, was I showed them Blood Simple and Miller's Crossing. Another comparison of, you know, here's similar narratives played out very differently. But Shadow of a Doubt and The Stranger are blood chilling back to back, right down to the dinner scenes in which both sociopaths espouse their personal philosophies, you know, where they reveal their true selves. And it is possible to excite contemporary audiences to return to Orson Welles, to return to Hitchcock, to return to John Ford.
I'll tell you, it's very hard to sell to a younger generation black and white films. I mean, that's it. I mean, my guys have been good because they're now 30-year-old men, but I will admit that I use like sugar on stuff. Like I'm going to go to New York to see Macbeth. You can come to New York with me and spend a day in New York City, but you have to sit through Macbeth.
There you go. There you go.
And which they both now, and it's funny because my sons watched Macbeth, 35 millimeter print of it, and they said, "Oh, this is like watching an old horror movie. It's like watching like an old Dracula, Frankenstein movie."
Oh yeah,
and they appreciate that vibe. Well, yeah, but it's also my oldest. I recently mentioned one of my favorite movies is Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo,
great film
with John Wayne and Dean Martin. And I said to my son, "You never saw Rio Bravo?" And he goes, "Yeah, because when I was little and I'd call out sick for school and I didn't go to school, you made me watch these movies."
See, I used a different kind of sugar. I would show some Fleischer Brother Betty Boop before any black and white movie I showed, and it seemed to break the ice. So, you know.
I have to ask you, Ray, and forgive my ignorance. is Oja Kadar still active in promoting Wells
She's
and
we've never been close. I met her once. Um, I met her at the showing of Don Quixote, the Jess Franco edit in 1992 at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I happened just to be sitting in front of her. And when the movie was over, and it was horrible, it was a horrible assembly, I turned to her and she was very emotional and very upset. And she had not seen the film until that screening. And I chatted with her a little bit then. But Oya is she's got to be in her early 80s at this point, and I understand that her health is not well. Um, she was unable to attend any of the screenings of The Other Side of the Wind for
Oh,
health reasons. She didn't see, and I know I know she saw a rough cut of the film. Um, it's a lot of the people there are just are passing with time. Uh,
Gary Graver is another one who.
Gary Graver, I'm so happy I got to meet Gary Graver because he appeared at the Academy of Music many years
Yes,
ago.
I was there too. Yep.
And so he came, Larry Jackson, I mentioned, brought him here for that. And they were friends. I got to talk to him there. One of my favorite, for those of us from Springfield, Mike Albano gave the keys to the city to Mercedes McCambridge. She was.
How did I miss that, Ray?
Let me get. This is a wild one, Mike. This is wild as it gets. Mercedes McCambridge was best friends with Theodore Geisel's wife, Audrey Geisel.
oh wow,
And
Dr. Seuss's wife, right?
and she and Ted would cut a rug on the dance floor, and she was good friends with the family. So Mercedes McCambridge came to Springfield to read Dr. Seuss stories at the Quadrangle, and for some Seuss related event. And Mike Albano arranged to give her the key to the city, and I was there to do my Springfield Union News job, which was to say, tell me about Ted Geisel. What was Dr. Seuss really like? And so I got through those questions. I said to her, look, I would really love to talk to you about The Other Side of the Wind. She grabbed me by the arm and like she said, Orson's film. She pulled me away and sat down with me on a step, and we talked about Other Side of the Wind, and we talked about Touch of Evil. And she was a wonderful, wonderful lady. And then I didn't realize, I found out much later, that she was the godmother of Wells's third child.
Oh wow.
It was a very tight friendship. And when you look at Touch of Evil, a lot of people in that film are doing it for Orson. It's gratis.
Well, Marlena Dietrich.
Marlena Dietrich's in that film.
Joseph Cotton is the doctor. Yeah, right. There's Zsa Zsa Gabor's on screen for like
everybody. It's
30 seconds, right.
You see that there's a wonderful term, Frank Marshall coined this term when they're shooting The Other Side of the Wind. John Kennedy had the volunteer program that was called VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. So Frank Marshall used to call it Visto, Volunteers in Service to Orson Welles, and they'd send out a Visto alert when it was time to resume filming. Wow. And it's very funny because Frank made up baseball caps with Visto on it and passed them out to the crew of the at the completion. And I know some of the old timers were there wearing these black. Someone gave me one, which was very kind of them. It's a black Visto pin that was given out to a lot of the cast members. And if you see the remake, Stephen King's It,
yes,
Peter Bogdanovich plays a director in that movie. He has a small role as a director, right. And he's wearing the Visto pin on the lapel, which was kind of nice.
Cool. Yeah. I have a trivia question to ask you, Ray. When I revisited F is for Fake, I thought I recognized Gary Graver as the news anchorman that appeared. That is Gary Graver?
That's Gary's in it.
I thought so.
You can also find Gary in, I think, 1 or 2 episodes of Merv Griffin during like the magic acts, and they would, they find some guy in the audience and that's the plant. And it was Gary.
Right.
Right.
Gary Graver sort of fascinates me only because
Yeah, he was with Al Adamson and Orson Welles. I mean,
Well,
how much
he
further
did a
apart
lot of
can...
work for Fredo and Ray.
Yeah,
He did
exactly. Yeah.
softcore porn.
Yeah.
I imagine he also shot hardcore porn, but
He
he did.
worked with everybody.
And he works for Orson Welles. It just
Well, the story. Since we're bringing up the porn angle, we'll go for that to boost the number of clicks here. The you're familiar with Welles editing the porn scene for Gary Graver? Have you ever heard that story?
no.
No,
okay.
bring it on.
So they're shooting the film Other Side of the Wind, and Orson needs Gary right away to be ready for the shoot the next day to film. And Gary never got paid by Orson for anything. Orson got him side jobs. Like if Orson did a commercial, he'd say, "You got to hire Gary to be the cameraman."
Right.
I'm saying he didn't, but Gary didn't get rich working for Orson, And Gary had shot a porn film called 3 a.m.
Okay.
And he needed to finish editing. So Welles came in and started cutting the lesbian shower sequence for the porn film 3 a.m. just so Gary could get done and get ready to be available for the shoot.
Now
Vinegar syndrome, you know your job. 3 a.m. has
you
to
have
come
told
out.
the two guys who are now going to ferret out if
We're going to find 3 a.m.
available anywhere on any format.
And that's a very noble quest, to look it up. It's only one scene that he edited in it, but
that's a great story.
There's stuff like I've been hunting down. There's these things called Cartravision. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The only
I know
person
what
I've
they are,
ever met.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So Cartravision, Mike, came out before VHS and before Beta.
Okay.
It was a completely square cassette.
Yeah.
That you put in, and it was only available for Cartravision TV, sold at Sears, and Avco was the money behind it. So they had some movies, but they wanted to create some original programming. So they hired Welles, and he made 6 20-minute shorts.
Whoa.
And they are very simple. It's Welles reading literature, sitting in a chair, or Welles outside on the balcony of his porch with the sun behind him reading something. But they're just dramatic readings. And there's 6 of these tapes. Unfortunately, when Cartravision went out of business, they got worried about copyrights. They started bulk erasing what they had.
Jeez.
And Gary told Joseph McBride, great film historian, wonderful friend, he told Joe McBride, Orson and I never saved copies. We didn't make dupes of the prints. We sent all these, and they were then lost. If you go on to YouTube or Internet Archive, archive.org,
yep.
Oh yeah,
2 of them exist, are available, that have recently been found and transferred over to video. One of them is Socrates and Noah, and they're readings about Socrates and readings from Welles's play 2 by 2. And I'm forgetting what the other one is. Oh, it's a collection of Mark Twain and others. So you can find these, and they're very low budget, but Welles shot this in August of 1970, right before he started filming The Other Side of the Wind. And this was, pocket cash. He needed the money, to work on this. So there's a lot of Welles stuff that pops up. There's scripts that have never been published, sadly, that ownership, there's a lot of questions. Welles never copyrighted anything during his life. So,
and it was a different copyright law at that time. If you didn't register it, you lost it.
Right. And I've been arguing that point with some people that some of the stuff is where there's copies in libraries, they really are public domain.
Yeah.
And
if it's prior to 77, you're in the right, Ray. The copyright law changed in 1977. Prior to that, unless you registered the copyright, you can't really protect it.
For about a decade, I did a lot of scut work and research work pro bono for the Welles estate. And I would look up copyrights on stuff that they owned or weren't aware they owned. Like I was able to get for them, and it didn't cost anyone a dime, thank God. Fountain of Youth which is a wonderful half-hour black and white pilot for a TV series, kind of like Twilight Zone-ish, from 1956. And then there's the Orson Welles show, which people have heard of. It's a talk show pilot that had Burt Reynolds and the Muppets as a guest. And both of those are now copyright is secured by the estate.
Yep.
They have tried for years. Nobody is interested in putting these out on disc or streaming. And Gary Graver said to me about Fountain of Youth, which is one of my favorite Wells projects. When I talked to Gary that time, I said, "How come this isn't out?" He looked at me like I was foolish. He says, "It's black and white, and it's a half-hour long. There's no market." So I thought, gee, once the estate had the color talk show pilot, which was over an hour, you put these together, you can sell this off. First TV pilot and last TV pilot of his career. There just isn't that people aren't clamoring for this stuff.
I will say that in the last 6, 7, 8 years, you've had the birth of all of these labels for physical media. Now, Steve has done a lot.
Yeah, I was going to mention, folks
and I
like
think
Craig
a lot
Rogers
of
and
might
Dennis
be interested
Bartok.
in now.
Yeah, Craig Rogers and Dennis Bartok at Deaf Crocodile. There's a lot of these labels now that might jump on something like this, particularly if you'd be able to. I remember I still have the VHS tape because you alerted me to it, Mike, when it was coming out, when the late, great Richard Gordon.
I was just going to ask that.
Brokered Return to Glenascow coming out, that 1951 short. To my knowledge, that was the only time it was issued was on that VHS tape.
Right.
And,
and
I was combining a number of these into a package. They're putting out box sets of, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee films that, Andy Milligan. We could go there if you insist. Yeah. And I think we're in a different era now where you might be able to interest, a label like Deaf Crocodile in this. In fact, I'm happy to put you in touch, Ray, in hopes that it might
let me know.
Facilitate something.
I think Return to Glenascow, which Richard Gordon bought. Have you seen it, Ray?
Oh yeah, I think I hate giving bad information. I think it's available on the Criterion Othello set as an extra.
Oh, I believe you might be right. Yeah, I think you might be right. Right.
Currently, the book I'm writing on is on Richard and Alex Gordon, and Richard particularly I was good friends with, knew Alex very well. Steve knew both of them as well. And that was the last thing he acquired to release. And he, as you know, he went out to Los Angeles and he filmed an introduction by Peter Bogdanovich.
Yep.
Of course, the great unanswered question is whether or not Wells actually helped direct that movie.
Yeah, because it would have been the only thing ever directed by Hilton Edwards, which seems to make us think that Orson probably had a hand in it. It's funny. Yeah, I had you and I talking, and my mind keeps going back to said, Stephen, this is many, many years ago. Mike and I hope you remember this, Mike. We went to an auction. Do you remember, Mike?
Ray, here it is, buddy. There it is. Ray.
So this is.
He has it on his fingertips.
I had this
Stephen,
in my
it's true.
office at the Reminder for years. I never had a single kid come and go, "Hey, who's that guy?" Because I kept waiting. Are they going to say, "How did you get Orson Welles' autograph?" And I was going to say, "Well, Ray Kelly and I went to this auction outside of Boston."
And nobody was interested in, Stephen, no one was interested in the film stuff, but Mike and I. We were the only ones. The people were there for the jade or the jewelry or whatever else was there from the Hollywood house. You, I think, were the sole bidder on that.
Yeah, $26.
I paid $50. I was the sole bidder. I have a sketch.
Yeah.
Of a sketch that Wells drew of a woman signed by Wells. I paid $50. Okay, I paid $50 for that.
By the way, Ray and I were so intimidated because being the rubes that we were,
yes,
scene, that number one, we kept looking. The auctioneer would say, and yeah, that's $50. and we didn't see any movement. I don't know how these people were communicating their
Yeah,
bids.
right.
We
They
both sat on our
flick their
hands
nose,
for
blink their
fear.
eyes. Right.
Yes.
We sat on our hands for fear that we would somehow make some sort of body movement and we'd be stuck with a bid. So once Ray got his and I got mine, we left. But the one piece, Ray, I don't know if you remember this. There was a thermos bottle he had autographed. It was the old-fashioned silver thermos with the red plastic cup, and he had scrawled Orson Welles on it. And the reason that they gave us is that he would autograph things around the house in case he needed to either sell or give them to something.
I'll tell you, I've got a couple of Wells, obviously, I've got a couple of my neat Wells collectibles. I have one of the film cans from the Paris vault for The Other Side of the Wind.
Cool.
Not the film.
Wow.
It's got all the labels and stickers in English and French all over it. And I had Joe McBride, was wonderful because I said, "Can you translate this for me? Because I don't know what half these film abbreviations mean." And it was 16 millimeter film, blown up to 35. And he says, "Oh, February 75. Yeah, this reel was all the footage we shot at Peter Bogdanovich's home in Bel Air."
Wow.
And I said, "How do you know that?" He goes, "Because I was there, and it was the month of the AFI tribute, and we used that time to do this."
Oh.
But I have Orson's desk from his Las Vegas home.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's the cool one.
You win.
That's the cool one. But I'll tell you one, this is the one you'll die laughing at. So Beatrice contacted me several years back and said she'd sold stuff off at auction. I've got some odd items that belong to my father. And instead of it going to a big fancy auction house, I was wondering, would you like to sell them through WellsNet? List the items there, collect the money, give me the money. I'm going to give it to a spay and neuter clinic in the Southwest. Okay, sure. So I had like Orson's, I'm not being funny, I had like Orson's shoes, a pair of Orson's socks, a couple of other cool little items and stuff like that. We put them up for auction and collect it. So I'm going through this stuff and I run across this really ugly statue. I can't stress to you how ugly it was. It had this like Art Deco skyscraper, right? And next to it is a chrome rocket ship. Oh, it's really ugly. So
that's a major prize.
So I'm looking, right? So I'm looking at this and I take pictures of stuff to put up and I take this piece of modern art and I shoot a picture of it and I send it to a friend of mine on WellsNet who's pretty well versed on things. And he goes, "Ray, is there a tag on the other side of that? Because that's a Hugo Award, Ray."
Yeah. I was about to say.
And so I realized I've taken it out of the box and put it down the table. I turn it around. It's the Hugo Award for the War of the Worlds radio broadcast.
Wow. That's an early Hugo Award, too. That would have been 1939.
No. They did a retro series. They honored the stuff that was pre-Hugo.
Right.
So I go, "Oh, my God, we can't put this up on WellsNet for sale because it's, you shouldn't be selling Grammys, Oscars. You don't want to do that stuff." So I call up Beatrice. I say, "That artwork you sent me." And she says, "The Hugo Award?" And I go, and I say, "Yes, you can't put that up for auction. You'll get in trouble. I'll get in trouble. You'll get in trouble. It'll be a mess." She says to me, "Ray, if you put that in a box, it is ugly." And it really is. "If you put that in a box and mail it back to me, I'm going to come down and kill you." And
guess you still have it, right?
And so she said to me, I said, "Well, this is a treasure, but you can't." And she says, "Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take the Hugo." So I have the Hugo Award for War of the Worlds, which I have on the Wells desk, which my wife was kind enough to not put a complaint about. We have a very large bedroom and the Wells desk is there. I didn't do anything stupid like refinish it because it's got paint stains on it from doing oil painting. It's got coffee rings.
Yeah,
it's got some pen marks on it and stuff from writing. And it's very funny. I get a kick too. And it was in the Vegas home. And I asked Bitch, I said, "So, where did you get it?" Because I want to know the history of the piece. I'm going to have it. You want to know all the background. She told me there was a store in Vegas that was the equivalent of what's a Home Depot today. And she said, I went, my bought that table, my dad and I picked it out and we, brought it home. We had it loaded onto the truck. I'm like, wait, you guys went to this Home Depot yourself? And she says, yeah. And I said, now Beatrice is a former fashion model and she's 6 feet tall and blonde. And I said, I'm just trying to get the image of Orson Welles with the cigar in Home Depot with a 6 foot blonde fashion model next to him, having this desk loaded on top of a pickup truck. And yeah, I guess that probably looked really strange to people.
Well, Ray, I know I booked you for an hour. We're a couple minutes over the hour.
All right, my friend.
I would like to have you back in a few months because there's a lot more we can certainly talk about. I would certainly like to talk to you about, and I think Steve would as well, is, Wells's acting assignments in various movies. I would love to have you talk about his issue with his nose, which he constantly
hated
wore fake noses because he didn't like his real.
I would even like to ask about Necromancy, his Burt I. Gordon film that he was in. So.
Yes. I just so we're going to have
Sorry,
you back.
I may have pushed it too far. I apologize.
I'm not thinking to myself, oh my God, he's going to expect me to watch that before we do this.
No. I won't ask any questions.
But we'll definitely want you back because there's so much that we can talk about.
Well, it's wonderful to do this. Enjoy this.
Greatest filmmakers. And again, Ray, you are truly and sincerely, I say you to be congratulated for all the work you've done to preserve his legacy, to uncover his legacy. This is the type of thing that, what I find fascinating is that it's guys like you and Steve, and I'll put myself reluctantly in your company. We're doing projects to to put the spotlight on films and filmmakers that really deserve to have the spotlight put on them, but they are not among the top of mind awareness folks.
No.
So far, every book I've read, I've had to explain to people who is Max Fleischer, who is Tom Tyler.
And that's really and
I'm prepared for who is Richard and Alex Gordon.
Well, Mike, I got to tell you, I would never have known if not for Mike Dobbs about Tom Tyler and the Phantom serial, right?
Yeah.
Which I went and got a pirated copy of that because I just loved it. I mean, first I loved the Phantom, and it was a comic strip. And Tyler's one of those great guys that really deserves a lot more recognition than he's ever gotten.
Well, I am very happy that I was able to do what I was able to do with it.
Yeah.
But Ray, thank you so much.
Well, before we sign off,
okay,
there's one thing we do at the end of every Cine-Geezer. Ray, what are you reading right now?
Right now,
what book would you recommend? I guess.
Okay, it's coming out soon. I've been asked to write the foreword on a book called Beyond the Martian Invasion. It is a look at Wells's radio career from the 30s through the 40s. It's more than just a reference book of titles, and I've literally been plowing through this large reference book because I'm doing the foreword for it.
Oh wow!
Excellent.
Looking forward to that. Beyond the Martian
Invasion.
Got it. I recommend Emily Carroll's new graphic novel, A Guest in the House. I'm a fan of Emily Carroll's work as a graphic novelist. She does original horror graphic novels, and this is her latest. It's terrific. Recommended.
The last commercial book I read, and I was Joseph McBride did his memoir in a Q&A format called I Love the Movies, But... And it's a look at all the film projects he worked on, the people he's known. It's got obviously a lot on Wells, but it's got so much on Capra, on Hawks, on Ford.
Oh, wow. I'm going to order that right.
It's a wonderful book. It really is terrific. And it's done in a Q&A format. It's a pleasant read.
And that's called, again, Joseph
McBride's I Loved the Movies, But. And if I'll give my 2 cents, find the publisher's website. It's half the price of what you'd pay at Amazon.
Okay, got it.
I'm afraid I've not been reading a lot. I've been watching a lot. And I've been watching a lot because I'm finishing up the section of the Gordon Brothers book, Alex's film. So I've been watching and rewatching a lot of his stuff. I just sat through the Bounty Killer, um, one of Alex's westerns that he made in the early '60s, and it really is a good movie. I mean,
It's a really good
it
movie.
has
Yeah.
a good plot.
I haven't seen it.
But now, Ray, one thing about Steve and I, we fall down into rabbit holes.
He's been in the Olsen and Johnson rabbit hole.
So Olsen and Johnson, the great comedians who did the stage show and then the movie Hell's a Poppin', which is really and truly remarkable. I showed the beginning to Hell's a Poppin' to two of my former colleagues from The Reminder who are both movie guys. They come over and watch movies with me. They were stunned. It's like this comedy is so contemporary. Well, so I have, out of sheer rabbit holeness, now have watched every Olsen and Johnson film.
Oh my God.
That is available. I just bought from the Warner Archives their first 3 films, which were to a film, absolutely unwatchable. Just terrible.
And I'm not responsible in any way, shape, or form.
Then I watched the last 3 films that they made at Universal in the '40s, which have moments of brilliance and non-brilliance. My Olsen and Johnson period has followed my Ritz Brothers period. I watched a bunch of Ritz Brothers stuff and came to the conclusion that, you see, this is maybe another book in here. Came to the conclusion that both Olsen and Johnson and Ritz Brothers were completely in their element in live performance, and that in film sometimes they don't know what to do with these guys.
I'm looking forward to your Joe Besser investigation.
No.
Really...
But I've also done Clark and McCullough, and Bobby Clark and his friend Paul McCullough, kids from friends from childhood, tumblers, clowns in circuses, got onto the Broadway stage, very, very successful, vaudeville, into the movies. Did a whole bunch of shorts for RKO, and they're borderline inexplicable. I've watched a ton of them. I don't know if I like them or not. Their stories.
That's really sad. That's a really sad comment. I've watched a lot. I don't know if I like it or not.
Thank you for bringing Orson Welles back into our arena for a couple of days.
But so in any way, this is what I've been doing. I've been doing the watching for the book, and then compelled. Maybe I'll do a book about forgotten comedians, whose work is still available in many ways, but
who am I to talk? I'm preparing for a summer research deep dive of watching every Sci-Fi Channel dinosaur movie. You have been watching better films than I have, Mike. So
well, maybe. Well, Ray, thank you.
Ray, thank you
so much.
Real pleasure to meet you too.
Great meeting you, Steve. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Bye.